Perfect.
So I'm going to jump into exercise B then, but again, just stop me and type a question into that chat box if something comes up that isn't clear. So exercise B is really a chance to translate what you've done in exercise A into more detail at the local level. So we've been talking during exercise A about a regional level. So what is the vision for the region? Exercise B is really focused on what does that mean specifically for your individual community. So you want to go through the priority ideas, and again, it's just those ones that were identified as the top two in each of those focus areas, and ask your group to identify ways in which their community would benefit if you were actually able to achieve those vision elements. And I'm going to jump down then to the participant worksheet again and show you what I mean by that. So after you've done exercise A, you see here again, on the participant worksheets, you can see where you can where participants can reference this to use those codes to sort their ideas into the focus areas. And then your participants can, if they choose, go ahead and write down the top two that the group has decided upon for each of those focus areas. You see that's there. And then moving on to exercise B, there's an example here. If your group's priority items included that in 2040 the region will have a prosperous agricultural economy, your specific community, so that could be your town, that could be your county. It depends sort of on how each participant identifies themselves as a community within or how they identify the community that they live within. And it can be up to the county level, it can be something smaller, it can be a city or town. How might the community actually be impacted if that vision is realized? So for example, there are a couple different ways that could actually come to pass. So preserving 1,000 acres of prime farmland in my county would be a way that vision would translate. Or it could be a regular vibrant farmers market in my community. It could be new farms in my county, or it could be local and regional partnerships formed to achieve this goal. So really there could be a lot of variety in how this actually translates. So what does the vision look like regionally? That vision might actually translate into very different things on the ground in different communities. And that's really what we would expect and what we would anticipate, given that the communities themselves are very different, that community members would have different ideas about what that would look like if that common vision were applied in their community. It's going to be applied differently based on a variety of different things like community size or what the actual context is on the ground. And that's really what exercise B is geared toward, is getting a sense of what that might actually look like specifically in different communities. So then there's some space there for participants to go ahead and write down how they anticipate the benefits from achieving that vision would translate in their specific community. So that's what exercise B is about, really going around and having people translate that to a more concrete on the ground experience. And again, this is where it's also really important that we know where these meetings are taking place, and we have some information about the participants so that we know which community they're talking about when they're doing exercise B. So then after exercise A and B, really it's just a chance to wrap up, thank people for their participation. If you have split your group into smaller groups, go ahead and reconvene the larger group. Make sure that everyone knows that they have the worksheet. If you have handed that out, I hope you do hand that out, that has the project schedule as well as information about how to continue to participate in future live meetings or to provide additional feedback on the website. And then ask people to go ahead and fill out the individual demographic questionnaires. Please do make it clear that those are optional. They're just very helpful for us so that we know who we are reaching via these meetings and who we are still missing, so that we can target additional outreach to specific geographic areas or populations that we're missing, so that we can make sure that the input throughout the entire Plan ESTN process is as representative as possible, and that we hear from all voices. Again, please be sure to thank everyone for participating and help them to understand that their input is just as important as the input that's being gathered via other mechanisms, and that we'll be synthesizing it, and it will be available. The summary of the meeting in a box materials will also be available, just like the forum input is available on the website. So if you have just one group in your meeting, you just need to go ahead and keep all your items together, the group worksheets, the individual response sheets. If you had more than one group, please keep each of those groups' materials together, clip them together so that we know which summary sheet goes with which participant worksheets. and then you should be ready to package it up for return. We're asking that hosts package those materials and return them to the TPO within 7 days of the meeting, and the information for sending that in is there. So I'm just going to run quickly through the rest of the materials that are in the packet. There's a sample invitation. Again, you can send this out either electronically, if you can fill that in electronically and send it out that way, or you can also get a Microsoft Word version if you wanted to fill it in. You can get that from the TPO and go ahead and send it out electronically, or you can fill it in and send it out in the mail. And hopefully that will make it easier for hosts to get those invites out and host these meetings. The meeting agenda, this is actually a handout that you would give during the meeting itself for participants. So it has an abbreviated agenda and lists the questions for discussion, so folks know what we're going to be stepping through during the meeting in a box process. There's also a map so that participants know what the Plan ET area actually includes. It's that 5-county region. So that is another handout. You can just print one of those if you want, but you could also print those and give those to everyone. This is the host sign-in sheet, and I'll explain that code up here in the right-hand corner in just a moment, but this is so that we can gather information about who was there. So name, email address, and then a space for folks to indicate that they would like to be added to the Plan ET mailing list so that we can continue to keep them in the loop. Again, the participant worksheet, we've already looked through this. I was skipping back and forth between the instructions and this. So this, I think you have seen everything on here that you need to see. It's, again, just a place for recording ideas, the top ideas, and then exercise B. The group priorities sheet, this is really, if you have one group, you'll just fill one of these out. If you split into multiple groups, you'll want to fill one of these out for each of the small groups in your session. Relatively straightforward, just the date, the host, the group number, if you had multiple groups, the name of the facilitator, contact email or phone for the facilitator and or note taker in case there's anything that isn't clear and we need to ask any follow-up questions. And then this is where we are asking note takers to record the top 2 ideas identified as you're going through exercise A for each of the focus areas. So there's space to do all of those. And then there's also some space for additional comments. If your group couldn't reach consensus around what the top 2 ideas were for each focus area, this is a place to record some thoughts on that. But you can also record any additional ideas that or thoughts that might be of interest to us about any feedback on the meeting, or any additional notes that might be useful from your conversation. This is the feedback and demographic form for participants. So again, this is optional, but this information is really helpful for us to know who we're reaching and who we're not. People can answer as many of these questions as they want and don't have to answer any of them. And then this sheet also includes some questions that we're interested in getting some feedback on in terms of whether or not the meeting was effective. Did you agree with the list of priority items that the group developed? Have you participated in the meeting in a box before, etc.? And then a place for additional comments on how to make these better. So again, those are just really helpful for us to get feedback so that we can continue to improve this process. This is a handout you can give to participants that has additional information about participating in future forums or meeting in a box. There'll be a meeting in a box for most of these sessions that we're holding live forums for. We'll also have some version of a meeting in a box so that people can also continue to participate in these offline small group meetings. And then additional information can always be found at the website. And then there's lastly this sheet where if people would like to sign up for more email updates, they can go ahead and provide us with that information. A link to the MindMixer site I showed you already. And then lastly, for the host, these are return instructions. So again, we've already described in the materials how to collect and package the materials. On all of those materials, we're asking you to enter a meeting ID code. It's relatively straightforward. We're just asking in these first 3 blanks to go ahead and enter your initials, the host's initials, and then in the next 4 spaces, just the date. So what date, the month and day of the event, and so that we can code these and make sure that we keep all of these materials together. Again, here's additional information about packaging and returning the meeting in a box. Last thing is a host feedback form. So similar questions to the participant feedback form. We're just asking the host to provide us with some thoughts about the materials and whether or not, and any comments for improving the meeting in a box materials. So I'm going to open it up for questions again if anyone does have any questions at this point, or if anyone has any thoughts, things they'd like me to clarify or highlight, I'm happy to do that as well. So Sharith and Cheryl, you're both unmuted, and Rob, if I missed anything, please say so. No questions? So I just encourage anyone who... Yes, Rob.
I was going to say it may be helpful for us to at least share a few of the tips we shared in our previous webinar.
Great.
For Meeting in a Box 1.
Yes.
Just so people can know, what some of those are. I know just to start off, one of the tips that we had shared was in order to keep, you're going to be having small groups of anywhere from 8 to 12, as Jocelyn said, or possibly in a larger meeting format. But ways to keep the conversation flowing are to not allow any one person to dominate. So you could start off asking the question that you want feedback on and have people go around and take a turn and go around the circle or the room wherever you're sitting. And so that, if one person seems like they're going on for quite a long time, and some people do like to talk, and we like that too, but try and encourage people to sort of summarize their point for them, and then encourage the next person to take a turn, so that you can get and you can get around the circle at least one time and hear from everybody, so that everybody feels like they've had a part of the conversation.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point, and particularly true in meetings where you may have say 15 minutes or a half an hour of an agenda of an existing meeting. It's going to be really important to just encourage people to keep their thoughts concise and say, so what I'm hearing is that your vision is X. Thank you, and move on to the next person, so we can hear from as many people as possible. Again, the idea of these sessions is really to brainstorm as many ideas as possible. So another point that we have been making is just to be sure that as you're facilitating the conversation, people don't respond to a previous idea, oh, that's a good idea, and start having a discussion about each of the ideas, but really that the idea is to brainstorm a lot of ideas. So if someone has a similar idea, that's okay. They can present a similar idea. We're just capturing all of those ideas. But really we want to discourage sort of conversation about the details of ideas. It's really a brainstorming exercise.
Yeah, it becomes particularly interesting when someone sort of tries to critique another person's idea.
That's right. We do really want to discourage
that. We're brainstorming and to try and keep it neutral, and that the idea of having the turn with people around the circle is very useful at that point to turn it over to the next person, so you don't continue with critique.
That's right. That's a very good point, that the idea is not to actually respond to anyone's ideas either positively or negatively necessarily. It's really just about idea generation. And then there's an opportunity when it's time to then as a group decide which are the top ideas. That's when sort of the conversation about some of those ideas might be more appropriate. But really using that time to vote, do a quick, if there is not a clear consensus, it really is sometimes most efficient to just go through the list and have people vote on which ones are their top 2 ideas. They get to vote twice, and then you can just summarize the votes and say, okay, these are the 2 ideas that got the most votes. These are our top 2 ideas for that category. So one additional point I'll just make, and I'm not sure I was completely clear about this, with the coding of these ideas, the tagging of the ideas with the focus area codes, it is really helpful as much as possible to have people kind of try to separate their vision ideas out, so that if there's a vision statement that is really specific to one of the focus areas, say transportation, that they list that idea. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the coding. Here we go. So that we actually, as you're taking notes, sort of list the idea on one line, the transportation and infrastructure idea on one line. And then if there's if that same person is providing another idea that is more focused on a different topic, to keep that separate so that we can then code those as different topics. So really, just to be clear that note takers should be writing down ideas, separate ideas, rather than sort of capturing what one person says, because one person might present several different ideas that really relate to several different topics. So kind of trying to, as you're listening, hear what those ideas are and how they are different from one another, and separate them out so that it's easier for us to categorize them as we move forward. Because we really want to be comparing and prioritizing topics that are similar to each other, rather than trying to compare between an idea that relates to transportation and an idea that relates to housing, for example. Any other points that I'm missing in terms of facilitation? Again, it's the facilitator's role is really around guiding the conversation. With these meetings in a box, it's a little bit different than the forums. During the forums, the facilitators and note takers, we ask to remain neutral. During the meeting in a box, because the host may not actually be participating in any other way other than hosting a meeting in a box, we do allow hosts and facilitators to participate. So just asking facilitators to sort of put on a different hat and become a participant for part of the meeting, and then continue to facilitate the conversation. So any other questions or comments, things that I'm missing, Rob? Again, if anyone who's watching this as a recording has any questions about this, they can feel free to contact me. My email is jocelyn@placematters.org, and I can put that up on the screen here in just a moment.
I think that covers it, Jocelyn.
Great. Okay, well, thanks, everyone. I appreciate your attending today. And again, feel free to contact me with any additional questions. We'll get the recording to the TPO to post on the Plan East TN website, and look for it there.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
You too.
Thanks.